All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you who have joined the EEI International Program's global webinar today. I want to thank you all for participating in the webinar. My name is Jessica McDonald. I'm a manager with the EEI International Programs, and today's topic of discussion is going to be electric company performance metrics, driving growth and delivering customer value. And before I turn it over to the moderator and presenter for today's session, I wanted to quickly cover some housekeeping items to ensure that all of you are utilizing the WebEx platform and able to hear and see the presentation today. So firstly, webinar housekeeping. In order to listen to the presentation today, there are two options to dial in. The first is to connect to the audio and have WebEx call you. The second option is to use the global numbers listed in the WebEx platform and dial the one that pertains to the country that you're dialing from. When you dialed in this morning, afternoon, or evening, you're automatically placed on mute. If you have a question or a comment or having any technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat feature, which is located on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you would like to learn more about the international programs, please email us at international@eei.org to receive our monthly newsletter as well as other resources and information. So for many of you, you're familiar with the international programs, but I wanted to spend a few minutes for those of you who may not be familiar with who we are and what we do. And so the International Programs is a department at the Edison Electric Institute where we work with 67 member companies with operations in over 90 countries around the world. You can see here on the screen the map of our companies that are represented in the program. We have a breadth of geographical representation from companies all around the world. And this really allows for a really robust and comprehensive dialogue and exchanging of best practices as we look at the topics like the one we'll be discussing today. And this slide gives a little bit more information about how we work with our members. The International Programs is really a platform for industry collaboration, dialogue, and thought leadership. We work with our members at the CEO level to host strategic dialogues. We also support our members in outreach and provide them with advisory support on select critical industry topics. We work with our members to promote them and to share their success stories and their innovations. And lastly, we also work on providing our members with cutting-edge information on industry trends and data analysis. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to the moderator for today's session, Dr. Lawrence Jones, who is the Vice President of International Programs for EEI, who will also introduce our speaker today.
Thank you, Jess, and good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening. And we're very delighted that you all have joined us for this call. As the topic of the day is on performance metrics, looking at how utilities are driving growth and delivering value to their customer, I'm reminded of the saying that you cannot manage that which you cannot measure. And as our industry is undergoing this period of transformation, and now more than ever, it's clear to us that measuring the performance of utilities around the world is something that is receiving a lot of focus, as well as the approaches that utilities are taking in terms of using and applying performance metrics to really deliver value for their customers. And so we're delighted this webinar to have a representative from one of our member companies, UK Power Networks, who will share their journey on how they have used performance metrics and other forms of metrics to really go from a level of performance that was not satisfactory for them to a level now over a 6-year period that is extremely impressive and very, very commendable. And so without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce our speaker today. Our speaker is Colin Nicol. Colin is a member of the UK Power Network Senior Management Team, where he heads the business planning activities, and he's also responsible for developing their annual strategic plan. And so we couldn't find a better presenter to kind of bring the whole business operational aspect, the planning aspect, and the strategic planning perspective when we look at the issue of metrics. Colin has about 26 years of experience in the industry, working in the UK. His areas of expertise range from technical, commercial, strategy roles, but he's also worked for both National Grid as well as the Northern Ireland Electricity. He has a Bachelor of Engineering, Electrical Engineering, and an MSc in Information Technology, as well as a Master's in Business Administration. And finally, he is a member of the Institution of Engineering and Technology. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Colin for his presentation, and then we will get into the Q&A. So Colin, over to you.
Thank you, Lawrence, and again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. The presentation I'd like to cover today is to give an overview of UK Power Networks, also explain our vision and strategy, and how we as a business have taken a metrics-driven approach to drive high performance across our organization. And if I take you through the slides that we have today, again, to say what I'd like to cover today is an overview of who we are, which we sort of covered, an explanation of our vision and strategy, and then effectively how we've taken a metrics-driven approach to improving our performance. In terms of who we are, just to give you the geography, where we, as UK Power Networks, own 3 of the distribution licenses for Great Britain. There are 14 distribution licenses. We cover effectively London, the east of England, and the southeast of England. And as you heard in the video, we serve about 20 million people, which is roughly about a third of the UK population. Our networks are very diverse. In London, we have a highly dense urban network. In our East of England network, we have quite a rural-based network with the propensity of overhead lines. And our Southeast of England network is probably a combination of both of those. So when we were acquired by the Chung Kung Group back in 2010, the first thing that they did was effectively setting out the vision for the company. And we broke that down into 3 sort of key components. We wanted to be an employer of choice, a respected corporate citizen, and sustainably cost efficient. But underneath that, we wanted to know how we would effectively measure against that. So under employer of choice, what we said we wanted to be was the safest, the best employer with a diverse workforce. Under respected corporate citizen, we wanted to have the most reliable networks, with the most satisfied customers, and be regarded as the most innovative DNO. We also wanted to deliver on all of our commitments, and that's quite specific in some way to the GB network. One of the things that we had to do for our regulator at our last price control was set out a series of commitments that we would deliver over the 8-year period, and we would be monitored on an annual basis against those commitments. We also, after some work with our stakeholders, added to our vision about being the most socially responsible. We recognized that as a monopoly network operator, we occupied quite a privileged position in terms of our society, and we have obligations in terms of how we support our fuel poor and our vulnerable customers. And then finally, under sustainably cost efficient, we wanted to be the lowest cost electricity distributor for our customers. And UK Power Networks also has an unregulated business, and we wanted to show that business making profit as it went forward. And the final piece underpinning all of it was we wanted to be regarded as the best performing distribution network operator in Great Britain over the period 2015-16 to 2018-19, which is effectively the first half of our price control period. So how have we done? To date, we've had a very strong track record in terms of our performance. So in terms of how we measure safety, we measure safety in terms of lost time incidents per 100 employees. The picture that you see in front of us, which is in the top left corner, is our safety performance. That's the performance across all the regulated GB networks in terms of electricity distribution. UK Power Networks had the lowest accident frequency rate of any company in 2016, which maintained its performance from 2015. In terms of most reliable, we measured in terms of customer minutes lost and customer interruptions, which I think is equivalent to CC and CD in most other countries. What you basically see that from 10-11, we effectively, on a weighted customer basis, improved our performance by, we halved effectively the number of interruptions our customers saw and halved the amount of time when they were off, how long they were off for. We then come down to lowest cost, and affordability is a key issue in the UK at this moment in time. There's significant scrutiny on all aspects of the energy supply chain. So our drive is to be the lowest cost distributor for our customers. The pictures you see in front of us is the current cost that we will charge our customers, our domestic customers, in the next regulator, or in this regulator year, 2017-18. UK Power Networks is the lowest cost distributor and has been for the last 3 years. And finally, in terms of, not finally, but in terms of service provision, that gets measured by our regulator Ofgem. They do an independent customer survey where they talk to customers who have either had an interruption to their supply, have asked us for a connection, or just have a general inquiry about the services that we provide. And what you can see is that when we looked at it back in 2012-13, we're sitting at 7.4 out of 10. In the last regulatory year, we'd raised that to 8.6 out of 10. So when I chat to colleagues in the business, or across other businesses, I'm explaining to them that we have customer service now that ranks at 86%, which we think is quite impressive given that on a proportion of it is when we've interrupted customer supplies. Those are quite quantitative metrics that are easy to measure, but when we come to things like employer of choice, that was a more difficult one because there wasn't anything immediately comparable. So what we did as an organisation is we entered ourselves in the Sunday Times best companies to work for. That's an annual survey that's carried out by an independent company for the Sunday Times, a major newspaper in the UK, where they basically send out a survey to all of the staff in an organisation and ask them to rate how well the organisation is engaging them as employees. We've actually been in the top 30, or before that, the top 25 best big companies to work for the last 3 years, and we are the only electricity distribution network operator within that index. And then in terms of external recognition of our performance, since our inception in our current form in 2010, we've actually been voted Utility of the Year 3 times, back in 2012 and then in 2015 and 2016. And we're the only company ever to win it 2 years in a row. And in terms of most innovative, that's actually quite a difficult one again. How do you judge innovation? And the way we've looked at it is firstly, how is innovation delivered for our customers? So one of the key innovations that I'll talk about later on that we've rolled out is our active network management and flexible connections. And to date, that's saved our generation connection customers £74 million in terms of their connection costs. In the UK, our regulator Ofgem runs an innovation competition every year, and companies have to bid into that competition to win funds. We as an organisation have entered 8 bids into that competition and been successful every single time we've entered. And finally, in terms of external recognition, we've won a number of awards for our innovation projects, both in the UK and in Europe, including EnergyWise, which is one of our leading projects that looked at helping fuel poor customers in London. But how did we deliver the step change? So first, as I talked about, is having a clear business vision. The second was about setting measurable business targets, because as Lawrence pointed out, there's no point having a vision unless you can have targets which you can measure yourself in terms of your success. Thirdly, it was about having clear, focused leadership. That was about deciding what we as a business want to deliver for our customers and providing that direction to all of the staff within our business. Fourthly, it was about confronting the brutal facts. we as an organization were not performing at the level that we should have been performing at for our customers, but we had to accept that before we could put in place the plans and drive the performance improvement that we wanted to deliver. And a key element in doing that was reinforcing a culture of discipline. That's about having the clear targets, about having the plans and processes in place to deliver those targets, and thirdly, about then having the monitoring framework in place to monitor that delivery and take action when those targets weren't being delivered. And finally, it's about promoting the technology and innovation that will help us achieve those targets. We've split technology and innovation out because for us, innovation isn't just about deploying more IT. It's about anything that improves the service that we give our customers, allows us to operate our network in a safe manner, improves network reliability, or helps us transition to a low-carbon economy. So on the clear focused leadership, what we effectively had was when we converted to being owned by CKI, the big change that happened was we became a standalone distribution network operator. Previously, we'd been part of a vertically integrated group that had both generation and supply as energy retail as part of their functions. And because of some of the issues associated with the generation and retail markets in the UK, there was less focus given to effectively the network operations side. Once we became a standalone DNO, we were focused basically on delivering the best service to our customers. So what we had to do was redefine what that meant. So what we were looking at was we wanted to give our customers excellent service, excellent network reliability at the lowest cost, but overarching all of that, we wanted to do it in a safe manner. And to do that, what we did was we set clear, simple, and challenging business targets, which we ensured from the corporate level targets down to the targets that we gave our operational engineers in the field were fully aligned. And finally, what we're focused on as well was making the people responsible and accountable for delivering their targets. So we gave them the tools and enabled them to deliver their targets, but we also held them accountable when those targets were not delivered. So in terms of confronting the brutal facts, we had to get all of the organization to accept the reliability or the reality of our performance. So the slide that you see in front of you was our safety performance. So you can see back in 2011, what we effectively had was 22 lost time injuries, which increased to 35 lost time injuries in the following year. What that effectively meant was that 35 of our colleagues didn't go home from work in the same condition in which they arrived. That was unacceptable to us as an organization, and we had to drive that performance down to improve the safety of our colleagues. So we introduced a whole range of programs, particularly around behavioural safety, that helped us reduce our performance to what we're seeing now, which is 3 lost time injuries. And while that's a significant improvement, an 86% drop since 2011, it's still 3 people that we want to make sure that, we want to improve that to be 0 as an organisation going forward. But lost time injuries is probably the top of the safety tree in terms of measuring safety performance. What we've also done is go underneath that and look at all of the other factors that we measure in terms of safety. So one of the other ones we measure is medical treatment injuries, where people don't have to have time off work, but they need to visit a hospital or a doctor if they'd had an injury at work. And as you can see, back in 2011, that was sitting at 74. Through a program of work in terms of understanding what was causing these medical treatment injuries, we've driven that down to 15. When we look at the reliability performance, you can see back in 2008-09, as an organisation, we were interrupting our customer. We had sort of over 200 interruptions per 100 customers. That was, again, deemed to be unacceptable performance. And again, by organising a range of both technological and process improvements, we as an organisation have driven that down so that now we've seen effectively a 59% reduction in the customer minutes lost that our customers are experiencing, and a 42% reduction in the CIs. That's the interruptions that customers experienced since 2008-9. And one of the things that we're most proud of is that our London network remains the most reliable network in Great Britain, and where we've effectively nearly halved the number of interruptions that they have seen as well. In terms of customer service, we measured that in terms of customer complaints. And as I mentioned before, Ofgem's broad measure of customer satisfaction. So you can see that back in 2012, we were sitting around 74% customer satisfaction, and through a range of initiatives, both internal and external, we've driven that up to a forecast currently of 88% for the 2017 year. Similarly, in terms of customer complaints, that was sitting at its low point at 84% of complaints resolved within 31 days. We've now changed that to be up to 95% resolved within 31 days. In the previous price control back before 2010, we were the lowest ranked group for our customer service. Our 3 distribution networks were ranked 12th, 13th and 14th out of the 14 distribution networks. And when Ofgem started this broad measure of customer satisfaction, the rating that we got in 2012 would have actually resulted in a multi-million-pound fine. We have to achieve a minimum of 82% customer satisfaction, or else we get fined under our regulatory regime. So one of the imperatives behind the performance improvement was also to improve the incentive performance of the organisation. In terms of cost efficiency, the picture was broadly the same. In the previous price control, we were ranked 5th out of 6 DNO groups. And when we moved into the DPCR 5 period, so from the acquisition by CKI, one of the key focuses was on our indirect cost base, because we realised that was inefficient when it was compared to our peers. So since then, through a process of effectively process improvement, but also redundancy, we've actually improved our indirect costs, coming down from 16 million back in 2011 down to 284 million currently. That's a 10% drop. And currently, within the current price control process, we are ranked first for both actual outperformance in the price control to date, which is in the first 2 years, and also we have to provide our regulator with a forecast at the end of the 8-year period, and we're currently forecasting to outperform our peers by the most over that period. And it comes back to reinforcing what our objective is, which is to deliver the outputs for our customers at the lowest possible cost to them. One of the things that resonated with us as an organisation was some words that were in Jim Collins' book, #Good to Great, and it was around a culture of discipline. And the 2 quotes from that we use quite a lot when we have our management meetings is, sustained great results depend upon building a culture full of self-disciplined people who take disciplined action fanatically consistent with the company goals. And that's what we were trying to achieve. We wanted all of the staff in our organisation to understand the vision that we were trying to deliver, how the targets that we had set underpinned that vision, and then the plans and processes that we put in place effectively helped us deliver that vision. And the other one that we always use is that good to great companies appear boring and pedestrian, but they're full of people who display extreme diligence and intensity. And it is about that clarity of focus around the targets that you want to deliver and how that ties back to the vision. So what do we mean by culture of discipline? So we break it down into the 4 key components that we see across our business and what we're trying to deliver. Those are reliability, customer service, safety and costs. In terms of reliability, one of the key things that we did was overhaul our faults management process. So we put in place checkpoints so that particular points as we went through that process, the field managers knew that were particular actions that had to be taken. We have an obligation that all customers have to be restored within 12 hours of a fault occurring. If they're not restored within 12 hours, then we have to pay a compensation payment. So every fault has checkpoints at 4 hours, 8 hours, making sure that if a fault is still ongoing at that point in time, the management are taking action to ensure that that customer never reaches 12 hours. One of the key things that we've developed to help our managers understand how their performance actually impacts the bottom line of the business is a real-time faults management report. So every 30 minutes, for every fault on our network, the engineer who is managing that fault gets a report telling him in terms of the financial impact that that fault is actually having for us in terms of lost incentive revenue. And that also then gets flagged to the senior managers in our operations team so they can see the major faults that are effectively impacting on our incentive revenue. The third thing that we did was obviously set stretching targets for the business. So what we are doing is every year as we improve, we don't rest on our laurels. Each year the business has set a target to improve, even though we are delivering significantly ahead of the targets that our regulator has set us. Our view is that you can't stand still. You have to keep improving because our peers are also improving around us. Then in terms of customer service, we actually, as part of the survey that the regulator carries out to determine the satisfaction of our customers, actually get a huge amount of data back from that. But what we now do with that data is analyze it in significant detail so that we can break down the drivers of dissatisfaction for each of the work types that we have so that we can then put in place plans and actions so we can address those areas of dissatisfaction. Across each of the work types that we have, so be it responding to faults, providing customers with connections, or answering general inquiries on our network, we have simple, clear, golden rules for all work types. And at a high level, those break down into we must respond quickly, we must take responsibility when a customer raises an issue with us, and our goal is always to get it right first time for the customer. But also actually for the staff, when we do achieve the levels of performance that we're achieving, one of the key things is about celebrating the success is when we do well as a business. And our interest in customer service goes all the way up to our chief executive. So if people are not performing, one of the areas that they have to do is they have to come in and explain why the scores are, where they currently are, if they're not meeting the target, and what their plan is to resolve that. One of the biggest changes that we had is in our safety field. As I said, nobody comes into work planning to injure themselves for that day. Everybody wants to go home from work safely. But one of the things that we focused on is around behavioural safety aspects, because we all have attitudes and ingrained behaviours that can cause us to operate in an unsafe manner. And what we did as an organisation was bring in a specialist team of people to effectively advise us on behavioural safety. And it was getting people to be aware of things like how your own personal risk perception actually impacts on how you do work, how people balance things like time v risk against their activities when they're doing their job. And they actually introduced us all to a new concept known as the alpha state, which is a state of everybody goes through it where your brain effectively goes into remote control mode. It's a natural part of being a human being. But if you're aware that that happens, it's about how you then, as an individual, ensure that if you know those things happen, how you then ensure that you work in a safe manner. That wasn't just done for the operational staff in our business, our engineers, our craftsmen, our linesmen. It was done for everybody in the organisation, whether you worked in an office or whether you worked in the field. You all had to go through at least the basic safety training. And that's had a massive impact. You know, we now have people who are basically champions for safety in the organisation across the whole organisation. So again, not just linesmen and jointers, but also some of the analysts in our organisation, because safety culture is something we want to ingrain in all of our staff. The other thing that we focused on was responding based on the potential for harm, not actual harm. So we might have had an incident where nobody was actually hurt, but there was actually, but for luck, there could have actually been quite a serious incident from that. So we now investigate all of those serious incidents as if the accident had happened. And we focus on, and that's led by a member of our executive management team, and the learning from that is then shared across the organisation. And finally then we come down to management accountability, where managers are made accountable for the safety performance of their teams. Finally then on costs, we were looking at our company incentive plan. Again, we're focusing on every year stretching the targets. Now, it's quite easy in terms of if people want to outperform their costs, they don't deliver the work. But we're very clear, our company incentive plan, in terms of the way it's structured, 60% of the incentive plan is on safety, network reliability, customer service, employee engagement, and only 40% of it is on the cost side, so we're balancing it across those elements. We also have ensured that there's a clear line of sight down from those corporate targets all the way through to the targets that our staff have in the field. And finally, one of the things that we've done is align the structure that our major contractors work with. We have an alliance with 5 major contractors in the UK for delivering major capital programme works. Under our regulatory regime, we effectively have a pain and gain share mechanism with the regulator. If we don't perform, if we overspend our cost allowances, we get penalised a certain amount. If we underspend, we get to keep a certain amount of that benefit. We've set our structure up in exactly the same way with our alliance contractors. They're targeted on a certain price. If they overspend that price, they have to bear some of the pain. If they underspend, they get to keep some of that benefit. Finally then, in terms of the technology accelerators, again, we're looking at technology and how technology can help us deliver either a more reliable network, better customer service, a safer network, or allow us to deliver all of those at a lower cost to our customers. We don't do tech innovation for innovation's sake. There has to be a benefit in it in terms of value to us as an organisation. So in terms of reliability, one of the key things that we implemented was our automatic power restoration system. This is embedded in our NMAC control system, and when a fault occurs, it allows it to automatically re-switch the network to minimize the number of customers who are off supply. We were the first network operator to deploy it in Great Britain, and it is an award-winning innovation. And it is one of the key things that has allowed us to deliver the level of performance improvement that we've seen across our 3 networks. We believe our London network has actually the most remote control and automation of any network in the UK at this point in time. One of the other things is about adapting innovation from other spheres. So one of the techniques we've adopted from other industries is a technique called LiDAR, which allows us to do laser mapping of the tree density near our overhead lines. This has allowed us to identify those areas of lines that have the highest density of trees so that we can target our tree cutting program in order to deliver the best benefit in terms of minimizing outages. It's also helped us reduce our costs because we're only cutting the trees that we need to cut. And then finally, another area that we're focused on is about more remote control and sectionalization across our eastern networks and our southeastern networks in terms of how we can take the lessons that we've learned from our London network and deploy that across all 3. And in terms of new technologies that we're looking at, in terms of how we can improve that, we're now looking and trialing things like power electronics that allow us to automatically balance load across different parts of our high voltage network. And that's a technology we see playing a big part going into the future as we look to incorporate more electric vehicles and heat pumps on our network. In terms of customer service, what we're finding is that We're having to increase the number of communication channels in order for us to engage with our customers. The telephone is no longer becoming the main way in which our customers engage with us. We have as many people communicating with us on things like social media, so we now provide the opportunity for customers to interact with us on FaceTime, Instagram, web chat. For our vulnerable customers, including our deaf customers, we now use technologies like Browse Aloud, and we were the first UK distribution network operator to get the blue tick accreditation mark. One of the interesting things that we've also adopted from actually more service-orientated organizations such as airlines or online supermarkets is an approach called Rant and Rave. This is a third-party product where it basically allows you to get very fast feedback from your customers in terms of the service that you've provided. So much like when you get a text email or text from an airline asking you about the quality of your flight that day, we now do that for our smart metering customers, where after every interaction we have with them, they get sent a short text survey, and we get pretty good feedback from that in quite a short period of time, and that's allowing us then to redesign and understand where the pinch points are in that process, enabling us then to redesign that service in terms of what we're providing for them. The other piece around it is about how we're improving the communication to our staff internally around customer service. So one of the things we found in terms of improving that communication is actually changing the means of communication. So we now run a series of animations internally. We do them once a month generally, where we bring out a particular aspect of customer service through a short animation video that's shared at all of our team meetings. And we've had a really good reaction to that from our staff because it's a fun way to inform them of sort of the programs or the behaviours that we want them to adopt in terms of customer service. And that actually came from our safety view, because we now use digital media quite a lot to reinforce safety messages both internally and externally. So we've produced videos that we use with our staff, we've produced a range of animations, and we've also provided that sort of feedback and information to all sorts of external bodies. One of the areas that we targeted this year was the National Union of Farmers, because we had issues with agricultural workers their plant and equipment coming into contact with our lines. We used a whole range of media to help inform them of effectively the dangers associated with operating their electrical equipment, and that's been really well received by that particular stakeholder community. In terms of technology, we look at things like one of them is a cable canary device. That's using partial discharge mapping to predict cable failures in confined spaces. This is particularly relevant on our London network, where we have lots of cable joints in cable pits or cable tunnels, and in order to prevent their failure and possibly injury to staff, this technology was developed with EEI technology and is now being deployed across our network. One of the other technologies we developed, again, was link box blankets. A link box is effectively a low-voltage connecting terminal that's generally found in public pavements. We had a particular incident where one of these failed disruptively and unfortunately made it onto YouTube. And we were always concerned about these technologies. These devices do fail, but we came up with this blanket technology that effectively we could quickly and easily deploy across all of these link boxes in major urban areas that basically minimized, in fact, removed the impact of those disruptive failures. Then when we come to cost, one of the big things that we as an organization has done is done a business transformation project. This is basically rebuild our processes and with that our IT systems to effectively allow us to have a much more integrated view of our assets and of our customers so that we can talk our customers through a complete customer experience. We've also been looking at how we then offer connections to our customers on the network. We had some issues where we had a massive growth in distributed generation connecting to our network. In the space of 5 years, we went from having no solar generation connected on our eastern network to 2 gigawatts connected. And at that point in time, we were running into issues where if customers wanted to connect more generation, they were facing some significant network upgrade costs. So what we did as an organization was effectively trial a commercial innovation that allowed them to effectively accept what we call a flexible connection. That flexible connection allowed us to constrain them off if we needed to for particular points in time, but what it allowed them to do was to connect to our network much more quickly at a lower cost. That approach, that commercial approach, is now being rolled out across both our eastern and southeastern networks and is proving particularly popular with developers of distributed generation. We also, under that banner, developed what we call the timed connection. In London, the Mayor of London wants to convert all buses to be electric by 2030. So he's going through a process of asking us the impact of basically converting all bus garages to be all electric. We connected the first electric bus garage last year, and we worked with them because their initial request for a connection was going to result in quite a significant network infrastructure cost. But we realized working with them that they didn't want to charge all of their buses at time of peak. And we said to them, if you can constrain your charging to be overnight, you can have a much cheaper connection. That worked for them because the buses are obviously at 6 o'clock in the evening, which is our usual time of peak. All of the buses are on the road. They were effectively quite happy to constrain their connection on that basis, and that allowed them to connect for a much cheaper cost. That's been rolled out across our network. And the most recent thing that we've done is roll out flexibility tenders across 10 of our substations. So we've asked the market to provide us costs for capacity, be that battery storage, be that demand-side response. We basically went out and asked them, we want, for example, 2.5 megawatts at this site at this time. What is the best price that can be provided for? We're still in that tender process at the minute, but it's looking quite positive for us. So in conclusion, how have we delivered that step change in performance? So it's basically focusing on 5 key areas, basically safety, reliability, cost, service, and how innovation can support across those 4 key drivers. We need to set clear business targets that are cascaded through all levels of the organization so that everybody from the linesman in the field through to the CEO have an aligned set of targets. Thirdly, you have to understand where you're currently operating at the minute and whether that is delivering best service for your customers. You have to confront the brutal facts of your actual performance. And once you've done that, then you can focus on the required improvement and put in place a strong culture that focuses on the processes and the discipline around those processes that allow you to deliver those targets. And finally, it's about using technology and innovation appropriately to help you deliver the best service for your customers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colin, you covered quite a lot. Well, that's good. I mean, no doubt. We have about 15 minutes, and so we'll try to jump straight into the questions, and hopefully we'll have time to cover a few of them here. I'd like to begin where you left off, when you ended talking about the culture. You spent a lot of time talking about being able to cascade this sort of a new vision across the entire enterprise. Can you talk about some of the challenges in going from 2010 to where you are now in terms of getting the entire organization to understand the importance of metrics? How was that transformation received, and any lessons learned in the process that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose one of the key things was about getting people actually to understand the reality of our performance and how it compared to our peers. And one of the key things was, you know, we were bringing people in and putting those metrics up on the board in front of a whole range of staff members and saying, you know, this is where we currently sit to our peers. Nobody wants, you know, we want to be the best organization. And, you know, the feedback we got from staff is they wanted to work for that best organization. But what they wanted to see from that as well was, in the past, they had a set of targets and they weren't clear about how those targets then aligned to the overall corporate targets. And the key message was, showing them how we were then taking the core targets and how those targets aligned with what we believed were the best performing DNO, and how the targets that they got, which were obviously more disaggregated, then flowed down to that level. And the key thing actually as well was having a vision, and the vision has been consistent since the inception of the organization. It has been adjusted over the years a little bit. We've added things to it, but people are now bought into the vision. At every meeting that we have, we talk about the vision, we talk about the values of the organization, and we talk about the progress that we're making against those targets. And actually, if we're not making the progress that we expect to make, that performance is called out.
Interesting. So stay on the issue of performance, the last words you used. One of the things that obviously is of interest is understanding, well, first of all, and you don't have to give me an exact number because I know it might be difficult, but just approximately how many metrics do you guys have? I mean, there's a lot of measurement going on here, obviously, and so just maybe a ballpark. And the reason I'm asking the question is regarding how many is how often do you update your set of metrics in terms of, this metric is not giving us the right, indication about this specific goal. So how often do you go through sort of an exercise to get rid of, basically the metrics that are not effective and then generate new metrics? Can you talk about that process?
Yeah, I suppose when I look at it from the strategic plan objective, we probably, in terms of what we deem to be the best DNO, there's probably about 15 metrics, the key metrics that we look at that. When you go down to each of our individual directorates, they would have more than that they're monitoring across their teams. Every year we actually go through the exercise of saying, are all of these still relevant? And actually, are there any new ones that need to be added? And, every quarter, we get all of the senior managers get together to go through the performance of the business currently year to date, so that we understand how that performance is progressing. And then every 6 months, we get the wider management team together, so that's about 600 managers across the whole organization, to sit down and go through effectively the performance of the organization. So that's generally done halfway at the start of the year, so that everybody's aligned with what we're trying to achieve for that year, and then halfway through the year for the wider management team so that we can judge performance. A lot of things change because our regulatory framework is changing. So, when we get to see things come along that we weren't expecting, we will look at that and adapt our framework. And we will look at things that we don't need to do anymore because there is the challenge. If we're measuring it, but we can see no value from it, then we'll stop measuring it.
Okay. So you're not just measuring for measuring's sake. At some point you decide this particular metric is no longer relevant. You replace it, and you either replace it or you don't even go forward. You just take it off the book so you don't have to measure it again, which is great in terms of obviously the time and effort that you put into this.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the issue of technology, and I know you talked about the project in terms of connecting your linesmen or your field workers directly to the metrics. How did that occur in terms of getting the field automation team to really adapt this new approach to how they were doing their business? It's in a sense almost like they're being monitored, but the impact of their work affects the company. So you wanted them to know almost in real time how they were affecting the overall performance of the organization. How did they receive that in terms of from a workforce perspective?
From our perspective, it was actually about, so one of our key targets, effectively customer minutes lost and customer minutes and customer interruptions, and the incentive that flowed from that. So, the technology itself, all of our staff now have effectively a mobile computer. getting the data to them is easy, but it was about showing them how, how their performance then affected that corporate level targets. And that was generally well received because people could then see how what they were doing on a day-to-day basis aligned back to the targets that we were trying to achieve as an organization. And that was part of that alignment process so that people understood, we're setting a target of X, then how do I feed into achieving that target of X? Well, I can see each day how I'm impacting on X.
Okay. I want to talk about the regulatory aspect. You talked about the regulators, changes occurring, and obviously there may be new kinds of metrics that may be generated as a result of new policies. How much of your set of metrics, how much of them are actually linked directly to the ones that are common to all DNOs in the UK via Ofgem? And how much of it are things that you generate yourself, metrics you come up with? And the ones you come up with, do you kind of present them to Ofgem, or do you basically give Ofgem the metrics that they're looking for, and then you have your own set of internal metrics that you use, but you don't necessarily have to share them with Ofgem?
I mean, Ofgem sets us targets across things like network reliability and customer service. They don't set targets for safety. That's outside of their remit. Safety targets is not something that generally gets set, but we've set ourselves a target because we believe it's important. On things like employee engagement and social responsibility, those are things that actually we work with our stakeholders to define that the targets that we as a business should have. So, if you're going to be a best performing company, you need to take your people with you, which is why we see employee engagement as being really, really important. Then in terms of social responsibility, we have a panel that we hold, a stakeholder panel that we hold on a regular basis. And, part of our vision, reviewing our vision each year is reviewing that vision with them. And one of the things that they added to it was effectively the social responsibility metric. And what we're looking at the minute is, well, how do you measure social responsibility? The way we're thinking about doing it is there's an independent index in the UK called Business in the Community Index, and we're setting ourselves a target of being the highest ranked distribution network operator on that index. So it's a balance between what the regulator sets us, but also, talking with our other stakeholders, what they believe we should be delivering for them as an organization.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about technology, the technology accelerators. I think it's very impressive, and again, congratulations for your work. There are 3 areas I'd like to get your comments on. The first has to do with the idea of you have reliability, customer service, safety, costs, and in all of these areas you're deploying different types of technology. How do you measure the efficiency of your technology investments, more or less? If you can, talk about that. Let me just give you one more that you can sort of incorporate in your thinking to respond to. You talk about the issue of flexibility, and we'll talk about the fact that you're now out with tenders for, providing, some technology for flexibility. What happens if you do not get any successful tender? What is your recourse as an organization if none of the tenders that come in meet the expectations that are, or the requirements that are laid out in the tender document? What do you then do? Can you just address those two?
Yeah, so in terms of how we assess the success of our innovation, we actually have to report to the regulator how many solutions we've deployed, the benefits that those solutions have delivered for customers, be that in terms of cost savings, improvements in reliability, safety, or environmental benefits in terms of CO2 avoided, carbon dioxide emissions avoided. So each year, we actually have to go through that process of saying, okay, for the innovations that we have deployed, how successful have they been? So to date, and we can't see everybody's information, but to date, as an organization, we've deployed the most solutions, but more importantly, we've also delivered the highest volume of savings when you monetize it for any organization. And we expect the regulator to be, very closely monitoring that as we go through this control period, because they do effectively allow us to recover from customers some innovation funding, and they're going to want to see effectively the benefit that customers get from that. And on your second point on the flexibility tenders, I mean, it's an interesting one because, if they come in at a price where the flexibility tenders, so the provider of DSR or generation response, if that's not more cost effective than doing the traditional reinforcement approach, we would do the traditional reinforcement approach, or look at another probably more hard technological answer rather than effectively a market-based answer. But we have to test the market to see what's out there. At the minute, battery storage the battery storage market is very dynamic in the UK at the minute. I mean, on our 3 networks so far, we've had 18 gigawatts worth of inquiries for battery storage, of which we've had 1 gigawatt worth of accepted connection offers. So, I mean, the market is still in the embryonic stage at the minute. We're testing that, and we're hopeful. But if the market can't provide it at the right price, then we will fall back on an alternative solution.
Okay. And then we're coming up on an hour. I just want to squeeze in 2 more quick questions. One has to do with customer service. I was fortunate to visit your customer service center, which is very automated and has a lot of use of social media and all the sort of new bugs and whistles that you made. Can you talk about how customers have responded to these new metrics or these new social media tools you're using, and what kind of feedback you're getting from them in terms of the usefulness of these tools from the customer's perspective?
I mean, we've had really positive feedback from our customers on it. As an example, when we had a major storm event, we were able to keep quite a lot of customers updated by, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and actually, typically in the past when you had a storm event, when people were off, a number of people were off supply, we've seen a big dip in our customer satisfaction scores. In the last major storm event we had, we didn't see that because it's such an effective way of keeping your customer base up to date with effectively what's going on in the network. They're not waiting in telephone queues to speak to an operator. It's a very immediate way for you to get information out to that customer base. And people are so used now to interacting on social media and looking at social media as a primary point of information access. As I said, we keep expanding the amount of channels that we're using. So video chat, FaceTime, stuff we're using with customers on a regular basis now. And it's also helping us. We're getting a lot of recognition for the work we're doing with vulnerable customers like the deaf and the blind in terms of providing them with easy accessible channels in terms of them being able to interact with us. I only see this as something that's going to grow in the future.
Good, excellent. Well, just one last question here, and then I'll turn over to Jess to wrap things up. In terms of this journey, and I like the idea of it being a journey, and you guys obviously have gone, you've made good strides from where you were 2010 to where you are today. It's very impressive. Any last-minute sort of lessons learned, do's or don'ts you would like to leave with our participants in terms of going from becoming a more data or more metric-driven organization? Last ideas, suggestions you'd like to leave with our participants?
I mean, I suppose one reflection, and we were actually, we had a safety summit last week, and one of the reflections we had from our CEO was on the safety graph, our performance actually got worse from 2011 to 2012. Now, in 2011, we'd have the number of lost time injuries, and it then went back up again. And you know, the key learning point that was drawn out there was, you know, in 2011 we thought we'd got it, we thought we'd cracked it, we thought we were on the ball, we thought we had everything in control. We took our eye off the ball, and performance got worse. And I think the key takeaway is, you know, constant focus is what's required. Effectively, it's that, you know, that culture of discipline, you know, diligent, always on it. Is the only way you continue to drive that performance, because as soon as you think you've achieved that, that's when you start to go backwards.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to offer your thoughts and to tell us about your journey from UK Power Network. And I think there's a lot of lessons learned here. Obviously, we've gone through the presentation rather quickly because of time. But obviously, I'm sure you'll be available if other EEI members in the U.S. and around the world would like to learn more about what's going on. We'd be more than happy to put them in touch with you and your colleagues at UK Power Network. So thank you from me. I'll turn it over to Jess, who will wrap things up.
Thank you, everyone, for participating in today's webinar. The presentation slides and a recording of the presentation will be made available on our YouTube channel. I will circulate the slides later today for everyone to have them. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colin.